Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 11th. Today is the 47th anniversary of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and relatedly, the multi-front war in the Middle East is now 858 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back yet again to the FDD Morning Brief. It's a big day for Bibi Netanyahu. He landed stateside yesterday, and he's got his 7th meeting today with the big fella since his inauguration. I can say one thing with certainty. He's nervous. He's nervous because he doesn't know what President Donald Trump is going to do next on Iran. He doesn't know what Donald Trump's next move is on Gaza either. And if the rumor mill is even remotely accurate, the two men may not be in full alignment as the tensions continue to rise in the Middle East. But let me remind you, the rumor mill is not an indicator of anything. If you recall last year, just days before the Israelis launched Operation Rising Lion, the press was filled with rumors of Trump-Netanyahu acrimony. Turns out the two were not just on the same page. They were locked and loaded and ready to fight shoulder to shoulder in Iran. So yes, lots of confusion. No, not much clarity. But if the recent past tells us anything, that could be a prelude to a strike just as easily as anything else. Today's guest is FDD senior advisor and occasional FDD Morning Brief host, Rich Goldberg. Not too long ago, Rich helped launch the White House National Energy Dominance Council, basically the energy equivalent of the National Security Council. But Rich is not just an energy guy. He's an Iran guy. He's a Gulf guy and more. Rich and I caught up recently to discuss the American calculus when it comes to taking Tehran to the woodshed. Are we moving from maximum pressure to maximum patience? Stay tuned. We'll talk about that in just a few. Phase 2 of the Gaza peace plan is rolling ahead about as well as a millennial trying to drive a stick shift car. The gears are grinding and everything is overheating, but forward progress? Not so much. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said as much publicly, and he'll probably say so again today to President Donald Trump. Reports suggest Hamas may be winning new concessions in Gaza, specifically keeping its light arms. Of course, Hamas already has light arms up the wazoo. Removing them all will be exceedingly rough, and the Trump team may be coming to that conclusion. But before you start banging your head against the wall, let me remind you, whatever is being debated now is just that, debated. The real action is coming in about a week when the Board of Peace convenes. Last I heard, they were going to give Hamas 60 days to disarm. So even if there was some backsliding, there's still time to course correct, and Netanyahu is working on doing so. But let me be clear. Gaza must not be Bibi's priority. He knows that. The real action is in Iran, and Bibi may need to make concessions in Gaza to get the Donaldissimo to focus on what matters. The existential threat, not the tactical one. Governing is about priorities and decisions, people. Netanyahu's priority must be the defeat of the Islamic Republic first and foremost. He can deal with Hamas later, but the window for dealing with Iran won't be open forever. Now for your headlines. Headline 1, Turkish forces aren't leaving Syria anytime soon. Speaking to Turkish media, Turkish Defense Minister Yasir Güler said that Ankara has zero plans to withdraw its troops from Syria. The Syrian government just signed an agreement with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, under which the SDF is supposed to integrate into the Syrian army. But Güler said the deal has no bearing on Turkey, even though Turkey occupies Syria. So it's not about the perceived Kurdish threat. It's about Turkish interests. Always has been. Turkish troops are staying put, not leaving. That's probably not good. Okay, so what about Iraq? Güler said Ankara has no plans to pull out of there either. Apparently Kurdish terror, or what they're calling that, is still at the top of Ankara's priority list. At least that's the reason he gave for maintaining troops in Iraq and Syria. So yes, you heard that right. Turkey, which is a patron of Hamas and ISIS and Al-Qaeda, is concerned about terrorism. Who says the Middle East isn't hilarious sometimes? Headline 2, Israel indicted 2 more individuals for allegedly spying on behalf of Iran. The hits just keep coming here, folks. This time, the suspects are brothers from Jerusalem. Both are in their 20s. Israeli authorities charged the pair with contacting a foreign agent and providing intel to the enemy. If you're a regular listener to this program, then you know that this is a growing trend. Last year, authorities indicted 25 Israelis suspected of spying for Iran. That's a 400% increase from 2024. But wait. There's more. The brothers aren't the only ones suspected of spying this week. Israeli authorities arrested an independent journalist after suspected Iranian handlers reportedly tried to pay him to snap photos in and around Jerusalem. The journalist also ultimately got nervous about the whole thing and notified the police, but they promptly put him in cuffs. The suspect's attorney said that the guy did nothing wrong. Maybe, maybe not. That's for a judge to decide. What I do know is that that Tehran continues to aggressively target potential spies in Israel. And it all probably sounds scary, but just try to imagine for a minute How many Mossad agents are running around Iran right now? A lot. The big game. Headline 3, Indonesia is planning to participate in the International Stabilization Force in Gaza, the ISF, as they call it. Yesterday, the world's most populous Muslim country announced plans to contribute 8,000 troops to the force, and that will oversee peacekeeping efforts during phase 2 of the ceasefire, theoretically. Indonesia said the exact area of deployment hasn't been finalized yet, but according to Israeli reports, the Indonesian soldiers would deploy between Khan Yunis and Rafah in southern Gaza. Now, there aren't Indonesian boots on the ground right now, but Indonesia is the first country to actually begin prepping for deployment. Indonesia's president is expected to attend President Donald Trump's Board of Peace Summit in Washington next week. It's possible the troops start making their way over to Gaza shortly after that. That, folks, is progress. I'm going to take it wherever I can get it. Good news. All right. It's time for my pre-recorded conversation with FDD Senior Advisor Rich Goldberg. Yes, it's pre-recorded. We usually do live, but we suspected when we had this conversation that little would have changed. I think that's held up. Rich's views on Iran are well worth a listen.
Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. Rich Goldberg.
John, thanks for having me back.
All right, Rich. Good to have you back. All right. I want to talk to you about Iran because it's all we think about right now, because war is looming and it has been looming and it feels like it's constantly looming. So how does one understand right now the American calculus as it relates to this looming Iran conflict?
Well, I think there are several facts that can all be congruent, can all complement each other, can all be true at once. Even though it's an environment that seems confusing, that has mixed signals, that you think you're going in one direction one day and then the next hour it changes. The president of the United States set a red line. He certainly indicated that he would impose some sort of cost or consequences on the regime in Tehran should they violently suppress the protesters in the streets. That red line was obliterated the way that a B-2 bomber might obliterate a nuclear site in Iran today. And so that's a reality. We have forces that continue to flood into the region. We obviously have seen the naval forces move. Perhaps we will see others. The air forces that have continued to move in, and cargo flights carrying something that we don't know, but potentially air defense assets, other assets as well, to put the United States in a force posture in case there was some sort of military action ordered by the President of the United States. We obviously also see the Israelis. They have capabilities. They obviously will be in tight coordination. We have the Prime Minister of Israel coming to speak to the President of the United States. This is a big deal. They're going to be on the same page on the intelligence. What are they seeing? Capabilities. What can Israel do? What the United States do, etc. And it's, at the same time, the president, while all of these things are happening, perhaps while battle plans continue to be finalized, while forces continue to be moved, obviously thinking about the red line that has been obliterated, but also thinking about the fact that we have a very fragile enemy of the United States in front of us. Millions of people did come out into the streets. This regime is teetering economically on the brink of collapse, as we've already seen one bank go under, which we think prompted this round of an uprising, and several other banks that could go under any moment. So the president has a lot of options at his disposal. We don't know what the answer is, but he certainly has a window here to at least entertain, gunboat diplomacy style, what the Iranians might be willing at a regime level to offer. And if it comes anywhere close to actually meeting all of the demands that we've heard Secretary Rubio and the president lay out, which seem pretty far-reaching, full dismantlement permanently of all of the remaining nuclear activities in Iran, that which was not already destroyed during the 12-day war in Operation Midnight Hammer, dismantlement of all of their nuclear-capable missile activities, the ballistic missile program, the cruise missile program, that which could carry nuclear warheads and travel far distances, the end of the sponsorship of terrorism, some sort of concessions on human rights and political protests, and releasing all of the prisoners that they've taken up. Obviously, you can't get back to 40,000 people who were mass murdered in the streets, but there are political prisoners, not just from this round, but previous round. And you'd have a transition to democracy, the supreme leader leaving. Who knows what's in the demands from the president? Right. But the bottom line is, that's basically asking for regime change by negotiation at that point.
Right. So it's regime change without firing a shot. But then, then comes the question of, all right, let's say you're the Ayatollah, no offense, but let's say you are, right? You get that good looking beard, you got a nice turban, and you're being told to go do all of this. You're not going to, right? It's not in your nature as the supreme leader. No one tells the supreme leader what to do. But the regime in general, right? I mean, they're not the regime if they are not sponsoring terrorism, building out missiles, building nukes, repressing human rights at home, treating women like, property, etc. This is what the Islamic Republic has done since 1979. So if you are a leader of the regime, if you're a top commander within the IRGC, you're one of the top clerics, you're likely not responding well to Donald Trump's gunboat diplomacy, are you? So the question then becomes, what do they do in response if they say no? Is this a real battle that we're looking to possibly fight here?
Well, I think you're right. The ideology, the doctrine of the regime, the playbook. Look, the administration, supposedly the president wanted to go to Turkey and have multilateral talks with other Arab countries involved. And what do we end up with? The same indirect talks in Oman that Joe Biden had to settle for, because it's the only playbook that the regime has. That's their only comfort level. Everything else is filled with paranoia, and we don't know what's going to happen here. We won't agree to anything. So, yes, you're correct. The inherent pushback, if they actually are still committed to the Islamic Revolution, if they're still the radicals that we know them to be, they're not going to just go quietly into the night. We know that. However, if you're the president, there are a couple of facts as well that you have to consider. One, by the time that the president fully had appreciated and been validated by his intelligence community the level of violence committed by the regime, the people were already dead and off the street inside Iran. And that's an unfortunate fact. We saw some social media for a few days. A lot of us, me included, thought, wow, maybe it's still fizzling, it's still going on. Took a while with the internet closed to really piece together what was happening. 40,000 people were murdered in a 24 to 48 hour period. And yeah, with that sort of level of violence, people went out of the, left the street, went into their homes. So there is no moment right now, other than people who might be getting put to death in secret, etc., people who are still being held, where the president's military action would immediately save thousands of people in the streets. That moment is behind us now. So it's all forward looking. So time is on the president's side to some extent, but at the same time, you also have to have a little bit of humility to say, I can't guarantee the president of the United States that military action from the skies alone is somehow going to bring about regime change just by dropping bombs. You don't know that. We would hope so. So what would you say to the president? Mr. President, you have to enforce your red line. This is a regime that seems to be teetering. There are people who came out of their homes and might come out again. What can we do right now? And the answer is, A, take out the largest external threats that still pose a danger to the United States and the rest of the world. That's their missile program. That's also their Navy and their threats to close the Strait of Hormuz. That's also their drone program and the ability to hit oil infrastructure in the region. And then, what else can we do to potentially enable the people to take control? Can you hit command and control? Can you take out communications? Can you punish the internal security apparatus and force people off the streets with their machine guns so that the civilian population can get back onto the street? And are there economic things you can continue to do, whether it's strangling the oil exports and finally cutting them off, or other means? The president has this executive order on tariffs, pushing those banks into collapse, starving the regime of its remaining cash. If the combined effect of that gives the people a chance, you've done something historic. But already, even if it didn't, you would have removed further external threats to the United States, just like the president did last summer. That is a benefit to our national security, and it will hasten the eventual collapse of this regime.
Okay. One last little piece of this is the regional structure surrounding Iran, right? You've got the GCC countries. They're nervous. I mean, look, just to be clear, they were born nervous. That's in their DNA. They're not profiles encourage most of these countries. In fact, I don't think any of them are. They've not wanted to tangle with the Islamic Republic. They're freaking out right now, right? They're worried about getting hit with some of those ballistic missiles. Is there a system that we can cobble together? This is not like Gulf War II or Gulf War I, where we're pulling together a coalition of the willing, right? This is a coalition of the unwilling that may be okay standing by if enough defenses are in place and if the United States can minimize the damage, how likely is it that we'll be able to keep them on side doing what we need them to do if things come to blows?
Well, obviously, any incursion into their sovereign airspace will be an attack on them. They will not have initiated conflict. This happened several times in the past, whether it was just Iranian attacks against Israel. We saw interceptions take place in the Gulf, or Jordan because Iranian missiles and drones were crossing through Arab neighbor airspace. That's a violation of their sovereignty, and therefore they used their defenses, in some cases U.S.-provided defenses, to fight back. And certainly, I don't think we would ever see them join any offensive military operation, but it would be wholly appropriate for us to augment those defenses and for have them ready to use those defenses to mitigate any damage against critical infrastructure, particularly oil infrastructure, if you think of Saudi Arabia.
And I want to ask you about because that's the real threat, right? That oil infrastructure, that it's not just something that harms Saudi or the UAE or whomever.
That would be
the kind of stuff that hurts us long term, right? And I got to say, the fact that Iran has the ability to do that and has the will to do that, for me, actually reinforces why this is probably an important thing to do.
Correct. You cannot have the gas station for China and the arms depot for Russia and the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism be able to, at any moment, kill a lot of the world's oil supply by attacking Saudi Arabia and shutting down the Strait of Hormuz by mining the strait. If that is a threat that just always exists, that is a win for China and Russia and a defeat long-term of the United States that will always keep us bogged down in the Middle East, which is why I return to your top priorities in targeting should be those top threats to the United States and to the global economy. And there are things we can do to mitigate the short-term risks of Iran's retaliation. We saw the Israeli Air Force very well done, dynamic targeting in the air when their fighter jets owned the skies over Iran. If a mobile missile system launched, they found the point of origin very quickly and they took out the mobile missile launcher. The United States would be capable of doing that too. But by the way, the Israeli Air Force could be involved as well and do that as well. So long as you have enough missile defense assets and jets in the air to intercept the drones, cruise missiles, and then be able to take out these short-range ballistic missiles, you will buy yourself enough time for your offense to take over and really degrade the missile infrastructure, missile sites of Iran, the command and control, until such time as you would say, okay, we have achieved our objectives here, and then either you've actually achieved regime collapse, or you step back, and as you saw after Operation Midnight Hammer, say it's time for de-escalation. We're willing to de-escalate. The regime might still be there. They don't want to have the decapitation strike follow. Therefore, they de-escalate off the ladder as well. But we would walk away, hopefully, from that conflict having severely degraded their missile capabilities, their drone capabilities, their naval capabilities, and potentially other targets that pave the way for the people of Iran to take their country back.
All right. A lot of things need to happen, obviously, to even get to a point where that is considered. Obviously, we're still sitting here in the middle of negotiations, trying to let peace or calm prevail. Last question before I let you go. The backdrop of all of this, there's this new thing that Donald Trump has stood up. He calls it the Board of Peace. It's actually created pursuant to a UN Security Council resolution back in November. It's not something that's wildly popular right now among a lot of European countries. They see this as an American-led initiative that might supplant the UN. They see it as a power grab of Donald Trump. They see it as they don't like the billion-dollar price tag of joining this thing. Got all kinds of problems that have been flagged by others. What's your sense of scope right now and the possibility of getting us to a successful place in Gaza in particular?
So I think there is sort of a fork in the road in front of us, and the Board of Peace has to choose what direction it's going to take. The expedient route would be to subcontract the work of the Board of Peace back to the United Nations and the NGO community who collaborated with Hamas and helped build up the threat that led to October 7th. That would be a disaster for us. The other path is to use the language of the Security Council resolution and to say, guess what? Even if you're the United Nations or any agency thereof, even if you're an international NGO, and you want to operate within the jurisdiction of the Board of Peace, Here are the conditions for getting money to do so. Here are the conditions for getting access to do so. Counterterrorism vetting will not be against UN sanctions lists anymore. It will be against our sanctions lists, our foreign terrorist organizations list, and of course the Israeli vetting as well. You want to have curriculum in schools. You want to have people teaching in schools. They will go through our vetting for the employment side, and they will go through our, along with close Arab partners like the UAE that knows a thing or two about curriculum, of what will be taught in these schools. Otherwise, you don't get money to be there. You can't be there. If we just say, hey, we're going to pursue an UNRWA model, we're just renaming it. It'll be the Board of Peace, and we're going to subcontract to a guy like Tom Fletcher, the head of the UN Humanitarian Affairs, who is the same propagandist who accused Israel of about to allow tens of thousands of babies in Gaza to die of famine, totally made up. If he's going to be the person that said, hey, you go just take care of all of humanitarian needs in Gaza, it will be sent to Hamas with other names, other hats, and other uniforms. But if we instead say, here are the conditions for all the different elements of humanitarian aid, construction, education, and we insist on de-radicalization of the entire information system, which includes the mosques, which includes the news, media, including some board members of the Board of Peace and their news medias that are influential on the street in Gaza, entertainment, all of that put together, I think we have a chance to actually build something new in Gaza. We have to choose the right direction in that fork in the road.
All right, I'm voting for Rich Goldberg as the new acting chief of the Board of Peace. Or I don't know if you're up for the job, but
to the deputy chief, to the president of the Board of Peace.
all right, I vote for you, whatever the role is. All right, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you, Rich Goldberg, for joining us yet again on the FDD Morning Brief.
All right, here's what FTD has on tap for you today. My colleague Ben Cohen has a harrowing piece in JNS about the global Hamas solidarity movement and how October 7th exposed its true nature. These groups grew increasingly brazen after the Hamas massacre, dropping the whole anti-Zionism mask to reveal the blatant anti-Semitism underneath. Meanwhile, on FTD's Foreign Policy podcast, host Cliff May sits down with FTD senior fellow and former UK ambassador to Yemen, Edmund Fitton Brown. He dealt with the Houthis face-to-face during his diplomatic tenure. Edmund shares some eye-opening stories from his time in the Arabian Peninsula and what he learned about the psychology of the Islamic Republic's Yemeni proxy. Finally, FTD's Mark Montgomery testified before the House Foreign Affairs Committee on Europe about Russia's new generation warfare strategy. Here's the playbook. Spark a refugee crisis through illegal offensive in Ukraine, then weaponize the mass migration chaos that tear Europe apart from within. Scary stuff, folks. You can catch Monty's testimony on our website, along with a whole bunch of other things that you should probably read. All right. And just like that, it's time to shut it down. If you're hungry for more, be sure to check out that website and our social media content. And if you like what we do, you can always head over to ftd.org/invest to make a highly appreciated and highly tax-deductible donation. Tune in Friday for another highly addictive episode of this thrice weekly morning show. See you in 2 days. Until then, I'm Jonathan Schanzer signing off for FTD.